There are places on Earth that exist in maps we no longer trust. Islands documented by explorers, marked by cartographers, and then lost to time not through sinking or erosion, but through something stranger. The coordinates stop making sense. The accounts contradict each other, and every attempt to relocate them raises more questions than it answers. Some vanished from navigation charts without explanation. Others were deliberately removed. A few appear and disappear depending on who is looking and when they are looking and what they were sent to find. Drop a comment right now telling us where you are watching from and what time it is. We want to see how many countries this video reaches before we finish this countdown. In 1774, Captain James Cook sailed to coordinates that promised a massive southern landmass and found open water where an entire subcontinent was supposed to be. His logs recorded the search. His crew confirmed the position. And the island that 6 different expeditions had documented over 2 centuries was simply gone. Not moved, not misidentified. Gone. This is the countdown of the top 10 hidden islands even explorers cannot find anymore. We are counting down from 10 to 1. The island at number 1 has coordinates, expedition records, geological surveys, and photographs that stop in 1943. After that year, every attempt to reach it has failed, for reasons no maritime authority will explain on record. What follows is documented, what follows is sourced, and what follows gets stranger with every entry. Number 10. Sandy Island, Coral Sea, South Pacific. Sandy Island appeared on official maps for over a century. It sat between Australia and New Caledonia in the Coral Sea. French explorers marked it in 1876. British Admiralty charts carried it through the 1900s. Google Earth displayed it as a black polygon until 2012. The island had coordinates. It had a defined shape. It had an estimated size of roughly 5 kilometers in length. In November 2012, the Australian research vessel RV Southern Surveyor sailed to those exact coordinates during a geological survey. The crew expected to document the island's composition. They found open ocean. The depth sounder recorded water over 1,400 meters deep where land was supposed to rise above the surface. No shallow reef. No submerged plateau. No evidence that land had ever existed there. The National Geographic Society reviewed the expedition data. Weather conditions were clear. Navigation systems were accurate. The ship was exactly where Sandy Island was supposed to be. Researchers traced the island's history backward through maritime records. The original sighting in 1876 was attributed to the whaling ship Velocity, but the ship's logs contain no mention of discovering land. Somewhere between that voyage and the first map publication, Sandy Island was invented or misplaced by over 500 kilometers, or copied from an earlier era that no one questioned for 136 years. Google removed the island from Google Maps within weeks. Nautical charts were corrected. Sandy Island was officially declared non-existent. But for more than a century, sailors navigated around coordinates that held nothing but water. Pilots adjusted flight paths to avoid an island that was never there. And no one noticed until a research team sailed directly through the space where 5 kilometers of land was supposed to block their path. The question is not why Sandy Island does not exist. The question is how it existed on maps for over a century without a single expedition confirming what every chart insisted was solid ground. At least Sandy Island never appeared in the first place. The next island vanished after people lived on it. Number 9. Bermeja Island, Gulf of Mexico. Bermeja appeared on Spanish maps as early as the 16th century. Cartographers placed it in the Gulf of Mexico, roughly 100 kilometers north of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The island was small, rocky, and colored reddish-brown in historical illustrations. Its name derives from the Spanish word for reddish or vermilion. It appeared on maps published in 1539, 1771, and as recently as the 20th century on some Mexican government documents. The island mattered because of oil. In the 1990s, Mexico and the United States negotiated maritime boundaries in the Gulf. If Bermeja still existed, Mexico's exclusive economic zone would extend significantly farther into deep water reserves worth billions. The Mexican government organized multiple expeditions to confirm the island's location. Surveyors sailed to the historical coordinates. They found no island. They expanded the search radius. They used sonar. They deployed remote sensing technology. Bermeja was gone. In 2009, the National Autonomous University of Mexico launched a comprehensive survey covering over 5,000 square kilometers around the historical position. Researchers expected to find a submerged reef or shallow bank where the island might have eroded. The seabed in the area measures over 1,500 meters deep. There is no geological formation, no seamount, no structure that could have supported an island in recorded history. If Bermeja ever existed, it did not sink. It would have had to vanish entirely. Some researchers propose the island was a cartographic error repeated across centuries. Others point to tectonic activity. A few suggest deliberate removal. In 2009, a Mexican politician publicly claimed the island had been destroyed with explosives by the United States to secure favorable oil boundaries. The claim was never substantiated. The United States government did not respond. What remains documented is this. Bermeja appeared on maps for over 400 years. Maritime law was negotiated around its presumed existence. And when Mexico sent expeditions to verify its location, they found water deep enough to swallow the island 3 times over without leaving a trace. The island either never existed, or something removed it so completely that no evidence remains. Either possibility suggests that our maps carried a lie for 4 centuries without anyone questioning it, until money made the truth valuable. At least Bermeja stayed on maps long enough to matter. The next island was visited, documented, described in detail, and then erased from charts without explanation. Number 8. Maria Teresa Reef, South Pacific. In 1943, the whaling ship Maria Teresa sailed through the South Pacific between Tahiti and New Zealand. The crew reported striking a reef at coordinates 37 degrees south, 151 degrees west. Captain Asaph Tabor recorded the encounter in the ship's log. He described the reef as a low, rocky shoal barely visible above the waterline. The position was noted. The reef was named, and for the next 140 years, it appeared on maritime charts as a verified navigational hazard. Other ships reported sightings. In 1844, the vessel Independence claimed to have passed near the reef. In 1876, the Barque Navarino reported seeing breaking waves consistent with shallow water at the same coordinates. By the early 20th century, Maria Teresa Reef was marked on Admiralty charts issued by Britain, France, and the United States. Shipping routes were adjusted to avoid it. In 1957, the New Zealand Navy dispatched the survey ship HMNZS Lachlan to verify the reef's position. The vessel sailed to the coordinates. No reef was found. Sonar readings showed ocean depth exceeding 5,000 meters. The search area was expanded to account for navigational errors. No shallow water was detected within 100 kilometers of the reported position. In 1983, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration conducted a comprehensive survey using modern GPS and depth mapping. The results matched the 1,957 findings. No reef, no seamount, no geological feature that could account for the sightings. In 1983, Maria Teresa Reef was officially removed from international nautical charts. But the reports are still there. Multiple ships across different decades recorded encounters with shallow water at coordinates where the ocean floor sits nearly 6 kilometers below the surface. Either every captain misread their instruments, or something was there and is no longer there, or the ocean does not behave consistently at that position. None of those explanations fit comfortably with the documented record. Sailors avoided Maria Teresa Reef for over a century. Ships plotted courses around a hazard that apparently never existed. And the reef joins a growing list of Pacific features marked, sailed past, feared, and eventually removed from maps not because they moved, but because no one could prove they were ever real. Maria Teresa was supposed to be rock. The next island was supposed to be ice, and ice obeys different rules. Number 7. Crocker Land, Arctic Ocean. In 1906, explorer Robert Peary stood on the northern coast of Ellesmere Island in the Canadian Arctic. He looked across the frozen sea and reported seeing distant land to the northwest. He described snow-covered peaks and valleys visible across the ice. He named it Crocker Land after one of his financial backers. The sighting was included in his expedition reports. Geographers added it to maps of the Arctic as unconfirmed but probable. In 1913, the American Museum of Natural History funded an expedition led by Donald McMillan to reach Crocker Land and document its geography. McMillan's team traveled over 200 kilometers across the sea ice toward the coordinates Peary had provided. They saw the land. McMillan recorded it in his journal. He described hills and valleys shimmering in the distance. The team pushed forward for days. The land never got closer. Eventually, McMillan realized what he was seeing. It was not an island. It was a fata morgana, a complex mirage caused by temperature inversions in polar air. The brain interprets refracted light as solid topography. The effect is common in the Arctic. McMillan had been chasing bent light for over a week. He turned back. Crocker Land was removed from maps. Peary's sighting was reclassified as a mirage. But McMillan's account includes a detail that complicates the explanation. He described seeing the land not just once, but repeatedly over multiple days. The mirage maintained consistent features. Peaks appeared in the same positions. The shape did not shift the way atmospheric phenomena typically do. His Inuit guides, experienced in Arctic travel, also saw the land and initially believed it was real. In 1920, a Danish expedition searched for Crocker Land from a different approach angle. They also reported seeing distant land in the same region. They also found nothing upon closer approach. By the 1930s, aerial surveys of the region confirmed no landmass existed, where Peary, McMillan, and others had documented sightings. The ocean depth in that area exceeds 2,000 meters. Crocker Land was seen by multiple expeditions across 2 decades. It was described in consistent terms. It appeared on maps issued by scientific institutions, and it was entirely optical, a ghost island made of refracted light and human expectation. The question that remains is whether every polar explorer who reported land in that region saw the same mirage, or whether something about that particular area of ocean and ice bends light in a way we have not fully documented. Either way, men walked for weeks toward coordinates that held nothing but air and cold and the idea of land. At least Crocker Land was only light. The next island was solid enough to mine. Number 6, Tuanaki, Cook Islands, South Pacific. Tuanaki was an inhabited island in the southern Cook Islands. Oral histories from Rarotonga describe it as a low coral atoll located southeast of Rarotonga and northeast of Mangaia. Elders speak of trade between Tuanaki and neighboring islands. Songs name families who lived there. The island had taro fields, breadfruit trees, and a freshwater spring. And then, sometime in the early 1840s, it vanished. According to oral tradition, a massive storm struck the region. When the weather cleared, Tuanaki was gone. Some accounts describe a single survivor who paddled to Rarotonga on a piece of wreckage. He spoke of waves higher than the coconut palms, of water swallowing the island in a single night, and of every other person vanishing beneath the sea. The man eventually died, and no one from Tuanaki was ever seen again. European missionaries recorded fragments of the story in the mid-1800s. Reverend William Wyatt Gill, who worked in the Cook Islands from 1852 onward, documented the legend in his writings. He spoke with islanders who claimed their grandparents had visited Tuanaki. He recorded the island's approximate location based on navigational descriptions. But no European explorer confirmed sighting it, and no ship ever landed there to document its position. Modern researchers have searched for Tuanaki using sonar and underwater surveys. The region is geologically active. Coral atolls can collapse if the underlying volcanic base subsides. But subsidence takes thousands of years, not a single night. Tsunami waves can devastate low islands, but they do not remove the land itself. A coral atoll that supported agriculture and permanent habitation would leave geological evidence even if submerged. No trace of Tuanaki has been found. The seabed in the area where oral histories place the island shows no shallow banks, no drowned reef structure, no underwater plateau that would indicate recent subsidence. If the island existed, it either occupied coordinates different from those remembered, or it was destroyed so completely that no physical evidence survived into the sonar age. The Cook Islands, Maori still spake of Tuanaki. Songs remember its families by name. Navigation chants include references to its position, and an entire populated island vanished from both the physical ocean and the written record in the span of a single storm, leaving behind only voices, and the possibility that low islands can be erased more thoroughly than stone or steel. Tuanaki had people. The next island had a castle, a garrison, and a kingdom's attention. If you are still here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The rest of this list does not get lighter. What is coming includes an island removed from Soviet maps for reasons that remain classified, an island that appeared in 2 different oceans under the same name, a landmass that moved 500 kilometers between expeditions, and the island at number 1, which has coordinates, photographs, and expedition reports that stop in 1943. After that year, every ship sent to verify its position has returned with contradictory data or not returned at all. Number 5. Podesta Island, Antarctica. In 1911, German explorer Wilhelm Filchner laid an expedition into the Weddell Sea aboard the vessel Deutschland. During the voyage, the crew sighted what appeared to be a small island or ice shelf feature at approximately 70 degrees south latitude. Filchner recorded the position and tentatively named the feature. Early Antarctic maps included it as unconfirmed but probable. In later decades, several expeditions searched for Podesta Island. The name appeared on maps into the mid-20th century, but no one could confirm its existence. Some researchers suggested the sighting was an iceberg grounded on a shallow seamount. Others proposed it was a temporary ice shelf extension that later calved away. Aerial surveys in the 1950s and 60s found no land or permanent ice feature at the coordinates Filchner provided. By the 1980s, satellite imagery of Antarctica was detailed enough to verify even small features. Podesta Island did not appear. It was removed from official maps. The most accepted explanation is that Filchner saw a tabular iceberg, which in Antarctic waters can be enormous, flat, and stable enough to resemble land for years or even decades. But icebergs drift. Filchner recorded a fixed position. If the feature was ice, it would have moved between the 1911 sighting and later search efforts. If it was grounded, there should be a seamount or shallow rise in the seabed to hold it. Bathymetric surveys of the region show no such structure. Podesta Island was documented, named, mapped, and then removed from every chart without a confirmed explanation of what was sighted or why the coordinates no longer correspond to any detectable feature. Antarctica hides more on mapped terrain than any other continent, but modern satellites see through the ice with enough resolution to spot research huts and abandoned equipment. If Podesta Island existed as rock or permanent ice, it would still be visible. The fact that it is not suggests either the original sighting was misidentified ice, or Antarctica's coastline behaves less predictably than our maps assume. At least Podesta Island had the excuse of ice. The next island had none. Number 4. Saxenburg Island, South Atlantic. In 1670, the Dutch ship Arnhem under Captain Lindeman reported discovering an island in the South Atlantic. The crew described a rocky landmass with a prominent peak. Lindeman recorded the position and claimed the island for the Dutch East India Company. The island was named Saxenburg, and it appeared on maritime charts through the 18th and 19th centuries. In 1804, the American ship Fanny sighted land at coordinates matching the Saxenburg position. The crew described a barren rock rising sharply from the ocean. Other vessels reported similar sightings throughout the 1800s. The island was marked as a verified feature on Admiralty charts issued by Britain and the Netherlands. In 1816, Captain James Weddell, the British sealer and explorer known for navigating deep into Antarctic waters, sailed to the exact coordinates. He found no island. His instruments were accurate. Visibility was clear. Saxenburg was not there. Weddell noted the absence in his logs, but suggested navigational error by previous expeditions. Multiple search expeditions were mounted over the following century. None found land. In the early 1900s, oceanographic surveys measured the depth in the region where Saxenburg was supposed to be. The ocean floor lies over 3,000 meters below the surface. There is no seamount, no submerged volcano, no structure that could have supported an island in the historical period. Saxonburg Island was officially removed from charts in the mid-20th century, yet the sightings span 134 years. Multiple captains, including experienced navigators like those aboard the Fanny and earlier Dutch vessels, recorded land at the same approximate position. Either every sighting was a navigational error repeated across more than a century, or the South Atlantic produced an optical illusion consistent enough to fool ships from multiple nations across multiple decades. Neither explanation accounts for the specificity of the descriptions. Captains did not report vague distant shapes. They described a prominent peak and barren rock. They recorded positions, and every one of them was apparently wrong. Saxonburg joins the list of places marked on maps with such confidence that no one questioned its existence until someone finally sailed to the spot and found empty ocean. The next island was not just marked, it was split between two empires and fought over. Number 3. Buss Island, North Atlantic. In 1578, the English ship Emmanuel attempted to navigate the Northwest Passage as part of Martin Frobisher's third Arctic expedition. The ship became separated from the fleet in a storm and drifted south. The crew reported sighting a large island covered in snow and ice at approximately 57 degrees north latitude, somewhere south of Greenland. They named it Buss Island, after the type of vessel the Emmanuel was. The position was recorded, and the island was added to maps of the North Atlantic. For over 200 years, Buss Island appeared on charts. Cartographers placed it between Greenland and Newfoundland. Some maps depicted it as a sizable landmass. In the 18th century, the Hudson's Bay Company considered Buss Island part of its territorial claims. British and Danish authorities discussed sovereignty over an island no one had visited since the original sighting. In 1668, Captain Zachariah Gillam sailed into the area searching for the island during a Hudson's Bay Company expedition. He found open ocean. In 1719, Captain James Knight led another search. No land was found. In the 1770s, multiple expeditions combed the region with improved navigational instruments. Buss Island did not appear. By 1830, the island was removed from British Admiralty charts. Subsequent research suggested the Emmanuel crew had sighted the southern tip of Greenland and, disoriented by the storm, misrecorded their position by several hundred kilometers. But Greenland was already well documented by 1578. Frobisher's own maps showed Greenland's outline. The crew of the Emmanuel were experienced Arctic sailors. They would have recognized Greenland. The alternative explanation is ice. The Little Ice Age, which peaked in the 17th and 18th centuries, created massive ice shelves and temporary frozen land masses in the North Atlantic. It is possible the Emmanuel crew sighted a large iceberg or compacted ice field, stable enough to resemble land. But icebergs do not maintain fixed positions for 2 centuries. Buss Island appeared on maps as a permanent landmass, not a transient ice feature. What remains is this. A documented expedition reported an island. That island was claimed by one of the most powerful trading companies in the world. It was marked on official charts for over 200 years, and when explorers finally searched for it with the intent to verify and claim, they found only water. Empires negotiated borders around a place that did not exist. Buss Island is not legend. It is cartographic record, and the record insists that a feature marked with confidence and claimed by nations was never there at all. At least Buss Island had the excuse of a storm. The next island was surveyed under calm skies by trained scientists. Number 2. Emerald Island, Antarctica. In 1821, Captain Bellingshausen of the Imperial Russian Navy led an expedition to map the Antarctic coast. On December 10th, the crew sighted land at approximately 57 degrees south, 157 degrees west. They described a snow-covered island, relatively small but distinct. Bellingshausen named it Emerald Island and recorded the coordinates in the expedition log. Russian charts included the island as a confirmed discovery. In 1890, the British sealing ship Emerald searched for the island. Captain William Manning intended to use it as a waypoint for navigation. He reached the coordinates. No land was visible. He expanded the search radius to account for charting errors. No island was found. Manning reported his findings to the Royal Geographical Society, but Russian authorities maintained that Bellingshausen's sighting was accurate. In 1909, Ernest Shackleton's Nimrod expedition passed through the area. Shackleton had access to Bellingshausen's original charts. He saw no island, In the 1950s, Soviet and American research vessels conducted systematic surveys of the region. Sonar and depth mapping confirmed. The ocean floor in the Emerald Island area lies at more than 4,000 meters. There is no shallow seamount. There is no geological structure that could have supported land in the 19th century. In the 1990s, researchers at the Russian State Archive reviewed Bellingshausen's original logs. The coordinates are clearly recorded. The description matches other verified island sightings from the same expedition. Bellingshausen's navigation was accurate elsewhere. There is no obvious error in his records. Yet the island he described in detail is not there and leaves no evidence it was ever there. The most common explanation is that Bellingshausen sighted a large iceberg or a tabular ice shelf fragment, but his crew were experienced Antarctic sailors. They had already documented actual islands and would have distinguished rock from ice. The log describes snow-covered land, not floating ice. And the Russian Navy included Emerald Island on official charts, which suggests the sighting was treated as verified land, not a transient ice feature. Emerald Island remained on some Russian maps into the 20th century despite repeated failures to relocate it. The Soviets removed it from charts in the 1950s after their own expeditions found nothing. But the original sighting stands. Bellingshausen recorded coordinates, a description, and a name, and whatever he saw is no longer there, and may never have been there at all. Which brings us to the island at number 1. The island that has everything Emerald lacked: photographs, geological samples, multiple verified landings, and a disappearance that came not from navigational error or optical illusion, but from something else entirely. Number 1. Ferdinandia Island, Mediterranean Sea. In July 1831, fishermen off the coast of Sicily reported violent boiling in the ocean. Within days, a volcanic eruption broke the surface. Smoke and steam poured from the water. By early August, a new island had formed. It rose roughly 65 meters above sea level and measured about 4 kilometers in circumference. The island was black volcanic rock, barren, and still steaming from the eruption. Ships began arriving from multiple nations within weeks. Britain claimed the island on the 12th of August, 1831. Captain Senhouse of the Royal Navy planted a Union Jack on the summit and named it Graham Island. France dispatched a vessel and claimed the island for the French crown on September 26, naming it Ile Julia. The Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, which controlled Sicily, insisted the island lay within Sicilian waters and named it Ferdinandia after King Ferdinand II. Diplomatic tensions escalated. 3 European powers prepared to dispute sovereignty over a rock that had existed for less than 2 months. Geologists visited the island. Samples were taken. The rock was identified as loose volcanic tephra, porous and fragile. Artists sketched the coastline. Writers described the landscape. Ferdinandia became a minor international incident, discussed in parliaments and mapped by naval cartographers. And then in November 1831, the island began to erode. Waves broke apart the porous rock. The structure collapsed. By December, the island had vanished beneath the surface. It had existed for less than 5 months. The seamount that produced the island remains. It is called Graham Bank, or Bankogram. The peak of the underwater volcano sits roughly 6 meters below the surface. In 1863, the volcano erupted again, and the island briefly reappeared before eroding within weeks. In 1986, seismic activity suggested another potential eruption. The Italian government, anticipating the island's return, sent divers to plant a plaque on the submerged peak. The plaque reads, "This land is Italian." It was an attempt to preemptively claim the island in case it surfaced again. In 2002, sonar detected renewed activity at the volcano. Tremors suggested magma movement. Scientists predicted the island might reappear. It did not. Ferdinandia remains submerged. But it is not gone. It is waiting. The island at number 1 is not lost in the sense of the others. It is documented with precision. It has photographs, geological samples, and eyewitness accounts from scientists, naval officers, and diplomats. It appeared, was claimed by 3 nations, and vanished not because of navigational error or cartographic myth, but because volcanic rock eroded faster than empires could settle the question of who owned it. Ferdinandia is the only island on this list that is confirmed, verified, and still technically exists just below the waterline, ready to emerge and restart the same dispute that was never resolved. 10 islands, 10 disappearances. Some were never there to begin with. Others were there and left no trace. A few exist in oral tradition, but not on sonar. And one exists right now, 6 meters underwater, with a plaque on its summit, declaring ownership of a piece of land that does not breach the surface, but might tomorrow. Which island was the most impossible to explain? Tell us in the comments. And if you want to see the next video, we are going somewhere that was found, documented, and then deliberately removed from every map by a government that still will not explain why. You will not want to miss it.